Hey, hi, welcome back and welcome to the Blue Front. This may not be your father's Blue Front or your grandfather's Blue Front or you in your youth Blue Front, but it is very, very, very nice. So the Blue Front is located at 701 Packard Street. Everybody in town knows the Blue Front for a variety of reasons. It was built, this building, in 1902. So it was a cigar store when Ray Collins dropped out of University of Michigan to buy it in 1927 under what the Observer at that time called his rather loose control. It grew into a cluttered but beloved corner store and newsstand. I certainly remember in the 60s, newspapers everywhere. It seemed like there wasn't a hometown newspaper that you couldn't find in the Blue Front, along with other reading and looking material if you went to the back of the store. So anyhow, it's been part of Ann Arbor for a long time. This is a great quote. Excuse me while I move this down. So, and the shape of the building was cool and anachronistic. That acute triangular shape common in buildings erected at those awkward intersections defined by weird old pre-automobile roads that went straight from one city to the next. Originally laid down to accommodate horses, then trolleys, and eventually cars. Then the grid streets were laid out and you'd get those goofball six-way intersections with triangular lots and buildings. In this case, Blue Front and Campus Corner across the streets. Blue Front also boasted a bold little turret in front. And speaking as the author of this paragraph, I always thought it'd have been so cool to live up there. Funky. You just know there were herbal jazz plants growing up there back in Ann Arbor's radical heyday, oh hell, and way beyond. And love beads somewhere back there and a cheeky poster of W.C. Fields playing cards, at least in my mind. And that's John Thibault, who said this or wrote this back in February 14th, 2014. And I can't help but think probably a lava lamp was also up there at one point in time. Maybe still is one. So my kind of quote on this is, as a lover of Ann Arbor's history and historic architecture, I am so pleased that this building has somehow avoided demolition. Eventually, without your support, this Ann Arbor icon will too shatter with the swing of the wrecker's ball in time. In significant part, that is why I'm taking to the streets. So kudos to Eric Cassell and his team for keeping our history alive. Go Blue Front. Go Blue Front. All right, so what comments did I receive when this photo first went up on the Ann Arbor Townie site about 18 months ago, I think, prior to the release of the book? Memories and remarks. Somebody said in the mid-1960s, early 1970s, went there every Sunday with my dad to get the New York Times and then to Ralph's Bagels, which was next door. I think the owner was nicknamed Smiley because, of course, he never smiled. Somebody else said, we went there every Sunday after church to get a Detroit paper. The Mad magazines were by the Playboys. I think it was unfortunate product placement. Somebody else said we would stop by after church on Sunday and get candy, the pop in the teeny wax bottles. I remember the warped wooden floors. Oh yes, remember those floors. Spent a great deal of time there. I'd go every week to buy the Sporting News. At that time, in the early 1950s, it was purely a baseball publication. For 25 cents, you were able to check the stats of all teams at all levels of the game. I think that was a quote from my old buddy Mark Smith, who was our second baseman, outstanding baseball player, back in the adult league in Connie Mack League out at Vets Park. Somebody else said, my mom lived next door to the owner, Jill Warren, for many years. I lived with my mom for the 9 years I was her caregiver, and I became friends with Jill. Jill was a wonderful person who sadly passed December 30th. She's greatly missed. She would love this. Thank you. I hope so. Perspective, what was happening in 1902 when this building was erected? Well, Teddy Roosevelt became the first American president to ride in an automobile. China's Empress Zhu Shi forbids binding women's feet. Think about that, 1902. Now, that was only 7 years before my father was born. Up until that time, it was legal in China to bind women's feet. There was an aesthetic involved. There certainly was a subjugation involved in that practice. This was also the year of the birth of certainly my top three authors, that being John Steinbeck. So a quick look at the Blue Front. If you've not been into this iteration of the Blue Front, do yourself a favor. Don't expect the old days. And from my perspective, I love the nostalgia part of the old days, but I love what the owners have done with it now. So this is a go-to place for me. So anyhow, thank you again. Hit the subscribe button if you'd like to be notified the moment these are released. We have many, many more. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and please come on back. All right, thank you.